Hello, vinaigrettes. I'm Clouded Vinegar, and I feel like I'm only a procrastinator when it comes to things I do want to do. Case in point, last year I spent 2 weeks studying for my winter finals. I was only able to do it with a huge amount of self-restraint. I blocked all of my distractive apps, and I used a Pomodoro timer to keep myself alert and not overly fatigued. It was ridiculously hard. But by the end of it, I had gotten the high scores I wanted. So naturally, once I got on winter break, tired from my studies, I indulged. I spent most of my time watching random YouTube shorts and mindlessly playing never-ending phone games. I felt like I'd fallen back into the pandemic spiral of unproductivity. As the days went by, I felt like I should do something productive and artsy. And what better way to be productive than to try something new? I really wanted to learn sewing, so I quickly decided on a concept: making and painting 2 tote bags from scratch. However, I ended up procrastinating, replacing the project with animating instead. I was too busy to stop animating and sew, too tired to sit and record, too unmotivated to work. I was on a break after all, why not just chill? I think the fear of failure and the prospect of a shift in my daily formula was keeping me from trying. So, I decided to motivate myself instead, making small incentives like doodling my tote bag concepts or going to the store and buying supplies, and I finally began working. For the 2 tote bags I planned to do, both would be sewn from scratch using canvas fabric and painted, with one being tie-dyed as well for an extra flair. So if the sewing flopped, the bags would hopefully make up for it in their designs. But before I get any fancy fabric, I decided to test an online pattern using cheap material, butcher paper. It's kind of flimsy and easy to tear, but is perfect for making and testing patterns for sewing. It'll also make for a great warm-up and practice before starting on the bags. I'm just going to do one to get the hang of it. I followed tutorials by Tamara's Joy Sewing Channel and Sewn Company whilst working on my prototype. I decided to only hand sew on the draft to practice my stitches. It was weird at first, but I soon got the hang of it. The hand sewing also took a while. I watched several live streams throughout the time I worked on it. At the end of the tutorial video, it called for the tote bag to be turned inside out. But because my bag was made of paper, I decided against it. The finished tote bag had questionable stitches, but that comes with being a professional beginner. What can I say? With my paper prototype done, I pretty much had this project in the bag. That was so bad, I'm so sorry. I moved on to making concept art for my tote bags. I had a lot of ideas going in, but I decided to narrow it down to a cute citrusy animal themed bag and an artist themed bag. Whenever I do big projects like this, I like to do rough sketches of my beginning ideas on paper. It feels more natural to me. Once I had a rough idea of what I wanted them to look like, I began doing some color sketches on my computer in FireAlpaca. The first bag, the artsy one, would have a painting of an artist palette with a sky background on it and a little splatter paint on the front and back. This one took me the most troubleshooting. I wanted a balance between realism and a graphic print style. I also had trouble finding the right colors, but I finally settled on a design that I liked. The hole in the palette acts as the moon for the piece, and little abstract doodles add a little bit more interest to an admittedly plain bag. Second bag, the citrusy animal bag, would have a silly little orange cat on it. This bag was in my comfort zone for sure. I've loved cats ever since I was little, and I wanted something warm to paint to contrast the blue palette to make the project more fun. It's just a cute little guy in orange. What more could you ask for? However, the thing that mainly sets this design apart is the crumbled tie-dyed base and the orange slice painted handles. It was going to be much harder to pull off, but I feel like it'd be doable. I honestly like all of my concepts I drew here, but they weren't exactly what I wanted for this project, though I might use them in the future. So without further ado, let's start sewing! Here are the supplies to use for the project. I followed this tote bag pattern I got from Hobby Lobby, and it didn't cause much of a fuss. If all went well, these tote bags would have strong handles and cute pocket pouches for extra storage. I began cutting out the pattern pieces and cutting my fabric to match them, which was totally not time-consuming at all. With my pieces cut out, I began sewing. The first bag took a while as I fumbled over sewing terms and diagrams I didn't quite understand. For example, I doubled on a piece for a part of the pocket, but because I was making 2 bags, I only needed to double it once, and so I ended up with an extra pocket bag piece. However, after that hiccup and days of sewing, I finally finished making the first bag. With rookie experience under my belt, the second bag went by much smoother. And by smoother, I mean I had to undo my seams and start over on most of it. So the second isn't as nice as the first, but it's got character, and that's what matters. So, after ignoring some unique looking stitches, I had 2 finished tote bags ready to paint. I started on the cat tote bag first because I was the most excited to do it. I took the extra pocket back I had and another scrap and tested an orange dye on them. I didn't want a very bright stain, so I didn't use the recommended dye fixative to help the color hold. The process was really fun. I washed each piece, bound them up with bands, and mixed the dye together with hot water and salt. The batch size on the bottle was more room than I had in my squeeze bottle, so I ended up moving the rest of my dye into an empty cookie container. Okay, look, I don't really recommend that. It was the closest thing I had on hand. I got dye everywhere, and I didn't mix it quite well because it was hot and leaking and not a good time. Because it wasn't shaken properly, the dye came out in slightly different shades. But for this project, I really didn't mind, though it's something I'll definitely remember in the future. After dyeing my cloths, I wrapped them in plastic and popped them in the microwave to seal the color. Once it was done, I gave them a rinse and threw them in the washing machine and in the dryer. I really liked how it looked. It was a near perfect match to my concept art, so I swiftly began the same process on my bag. However, after dyeing and rinsing it, the backside didn't get much dye.
That's frustrating.
So I hastily redid the dye job, and as a result, the bag's blank white base became pale orange. But I really liked it regardless. After that, I threw it into the washer and dryer and I ironed it out. I sketched a design out on the bag, and then I began painting. I admit I over-poured the orange paint at the start, but I ended up with enough for the bag, so we'll call it a win. With each color, I added a bit of fabric medium to help the paint set permanently and not become stiff on the bag. After painting the front, I moved on to the handles. They were much harder to paint, and I was feeling a bit impatient, so I used a hairdryer to speed it up. It's a miracle the front didn't smear in the back. Once both handles were done, I added some finishing touches, like painting little cat paws on the orange swatches. I let it dry completely, ironed it out, and I had one tote bag finished. Time to work on the artsy one! I started by sketching the design a bit lighter on this bag, as the sketch was still visible through the paint on my cat bag. Using a toothbrush and paintbrush, I flung some paint on the handles to make the bag a bit more interesting. Referencing my art on my laptop, I color matched the paint to the best of my ability and painted the design. I ended up making the design more cartoony than I had initially wanted, but I think it turned out better that way. I painted some doodles and added some extra paint splashes. I do wish I had added a cool S to the bag. Missed opportunity. I let the bag dry, ironed it flat, and at last my bags are done! Cat one came out so well. Perfect, even. I'll never have a career in comedy. Please let me have this. I'm so happy with these. They've got me even more excited to learn more about sewing and get better. If there was something I learned for sure, it was that I need more practice. I got a lot of off-screen help with my sewing. I'm really glad I took the chance to try something new because I learned so much along the way, and I'm so excited for what kinds of sewing projects I can work on in the future. If you enjoyed my work and you'd like to see more of it, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you have any ideas for more artsy stuff from me, make sure to leave a comment. Though, if you do subscribe, please be warned, my projects take a lot of time to finish, so you'll likely have to wait a while. Well, that's it from me, so look for the silver lining in every cloud, and have a blessed day.